Hi, I'm Sean Callagy. A lot of times clients ask me, what do I do if I've been falsely accused of breach of contract? And so that's what this video is all about. Some key secrets to think about, the 3 key secrets actually, in a breach of contract case. So a contract is an agreement between 2 parties, and it requires something called consideration. And contracts may or may not have to be in writing. Certain transfers of property, transfers of property generally in most states and certainly New Jersey have to be in writing. And there's a few issues that are really not that critical for you to know and understand, but let me talk about what is. The first thing that's really important is the process. So right, there's 3 keys. Process, key 1 is process. And when you're thinking about process in terms of any lawsuit or legal action, you have to understand that everything begins with a complaint. And a lot of times when people get hit with a complaint, and you may have been hit with a letter or a complaint, and we'll talk about both, but in terms of the complaint itself, that's just the beginning of a legal action. It doesn't mean that anything is necessarily bad is going to happen, and you just need to file an answer at some point in time. And different states have different time frames for you to respond. And if a complaint is filed against you, it's not required, but you should be proceeding with an attorney because there's a myriad of different possibilities and options that you have in terms of how you respond to that complaint. So the first issue is that it begins with the filing of the complaint. But let's say that you haven't had a complaint filed against you yet, and you just had a letter that's written to you, which essentially says something to the effect of, hey, you've breached the contract with my client, we're demanding a certain amount of money or potentially a sit down and talk about it. If you received a letter like that, you should also immediately call an attorney because again, there's a ton of different things to think about. And I'm not just saying that to generate a phone call from you. Let's talk about some of those things. When somebody first begins to accuse you of a breach of contract, and that breach could include a breach of your fiduciary duty, a breach of a partnership agreement, it could be saying that you owe them money in some way, there's an entire framework that'll involve the second step that I'll mention in a moment, which is called the influence component to all this, that begins to be affected. So once the process is commenced, either with you receiving a letter or a complaint that's been filed against you, in either of these circumstances, you should immediately phone a competent attorney. And there's other videos we do about how you select your attorney. I'm not going to go into that right here. But you should absolutely call an attorney. Because once the complaint's been filed, how you frame your answer, whether or not you decide to make claims in response, or even better, hopefully, you haven't had a complaint filed against you yet. You've only had a letter that's been written to you. And there's a tremendous opportunity in those situations to effectively work your way through so a complaint never gets filed. And why should you be concerned if a complaint gets filed? Because then it's just going to take more time and money to defend it. That's all. And now you're into a process that could take a number of years to resolve. And a lot of times, when attorneys are involved in a situation, it could lead to a significant escalation. So it's even better if initially attorneys are not the people communicating on behalf of clients. And that's why as soon as preceding the letter, so let's say we talked about a complaint, we talked about a letter, but even preceding that letter, if you're sensing there's some issues and tension that are building between you and somebody that you have a contractual agreement with, you can also call us at that point, not to have us begin to communicate on your behalf, but to stage and to think about how you're going to communicate, how you're going to resolve the situation. Because in reality, the third thing I want to talk about today is our emotional states in dealing with a legal issue. The first is your process, the third is your emotional states, and the second is your level of influence. But jumping to that third piece for a second, once you begin to think about the emotional involvement of human beings, there's an amazing process that begins to evolve in handling any lawsuit. And that process is this. The human ego becomes engaged initially. And there's like these consciousness elements that begin to move forward that say that we want to be right. We want to make sure that we're heard, that we're vindicated, and all of these emotional components start to roll. And when you have 2 people that are dealing with something, even if they're totally authentic and honest, when that process really begins to move forward, then it could take quite a long time to unwind. And we've seen time after time, hey, it's even happened to me, where I've been, felt like somebody's done something wrong to me, I've been falsely accused of something, or I feel like I haven't been heard or vindicated, that all of a sudden you're emotionally engaged at a really high level. And what can happen for people is that emotional engagement, that ego engagement, can lead to people taking action steps and saying things that begin to escalate a process. And that escalation of process has this interesting way of winding down over time. And as soon as people begin to build their legal bills, they begin to feel that they're in this time time-consuming litigation process, a lot of times that makes people much more reasonable. But unfortunately, sometimes that's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road when the bills are mounting, and time has been consumed in a huge way. So that emotional component, your management of your own emotional states is huge. And when people hear that, sometimes they're saying, so what do you think I should do? Let them push me around? Absolutely not. I have 2 top 100 national jury verdicts, which we crushed people, right, for $27 million and $33 million, who were super ego-driven on the other side. And in both cases, we offered a fraction of that to resolve the case earlier. And that was driven by ego-driven people who were not effectively controlled and advised by their lawyers. So what this video is really telling you is, if there's a way to shift out of this process early on, call us. We'll help coach you through that. We'll help hopefully get you to that place so that lawyers we don't have to begin to communicate on your behalf. And that's really all about the emotional states. If, however, somebody doesn't want to go down that road and they're being disrespectful, hyper-aggressive, they're lying, they're driving the process, then we'll come in and we'll do what we do, which is be caring, urgent, aggressive, and help you get it resolved in a different way by creating leverage, pressure, exposing lies, and all those things, right? Which really brings me to that second issue. So we talked about process, and we want to try to intercept this as early as you can in the process, even before a letter is written by a lawyer, after a letter is written by a lawyer, or that complaint. At any stage in that process, you're always trying to create leverage to get yourself to a reasonable, fair, just resolution without spending incredible amounts of time and money in that process, right? And so that's where the third piece, your emotional states, your own self-mastery comes into play, and making sure you're in control of your mind, your emotions, and your strategic use of aggression, your use of aggression in ways that's on purpose, not just out of control. But that leads to that second critically important component, and that's how influence is deployed. Your influence and the influence of your attorney. And human influence is really the key to resolving all lawsuits. And it's what makes people can't not stand attorneys and what makes people love certain attorneys. There's attorneys that use influence in an incredibly inauthentic, unjust, lying, cheating, stealing way. And unfortunately, our court system is not always set up to handle it that effectively. We do other videos on that. But the simple, quick point I want to make for right now is you need to be deciding how you're going to be influencing the process. And what a lot of people do, unfortunately, in deploying human influence is they underestimate the intelligence of the other side, the lawyer, the person they're dealing with, and even the judiciary, which is why a lot of people think when they become involved in a legal process, they have to start to lie and manipulate, and they think that's what it's all about. But quite frankly, that's the last thing it's about. It's about authentically coming forward in truth to create resolution. And when you're thinking about the attorney you're selecting, the question you have to ask yourself is, can this attorney at a masterful level influence this process? Is this someone who can talk about this more effectively than I can? Do they instantly know my story? Can they convey it? Can they portray it? Are they going to be able to stage this in an authentic process of influence to get me to my resolution? So it's all about mastering the process, mastering influence, and mastering ourselves, our emotional states, and quite frankly, the emotional states of the other side that bring about a resolution to our breach of contract case we've been unfairly accused. And everything is about getting to a just and truthful, authentic result. If you need help with that, if there's any of this beginning, my name is Sean Callagy. We're Callagy Law. I have 115 passionate people that deal with issues like this every day. Please give us a call at 201-261-1700. If you're not ready to make that phone call for any reason, please don't be concerned. It's a free consultation. But if you are, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have awesome videos and content every day for you. Come find us, follow us. We want to fundamentally change the way you feel about lawyers through our caring, urgency, and aggression. Thanks, I'm Sean Callagy. Have a great day.